Hello, everyone. Welcome back. My name's Denise, and I am the digital media manager for Lo Schiavo Genealogica. And we are doing this special series with our owner, Melanie Holtz, with regards to her book, The Family Tree Italian Genealogy Guide. Our hope, our goal is to get some general information from this great book for folks to process if they're doing their own Italian genealogy projects. If you're anxious to learn as much as you can and don't want to wait for each one of these to roll out, you can visit our website, but I'll be sure to include a link in the show notes if you want to purchase this book. But we do welcome you. Melanie, it's great to have you back.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone.
Yeah, we're great. It's great to have everyone here. And this is going to be a great conversation. Today, we're going to talk about identifying your immigrant ancestors. So I have quite a few questions. So we're just going to jump right in. So, Melanie, where does the research actually start? In Italy or someplace else?
Well, the research starts in the place of immigration. So if your family immigrated into Canada, then the research will start in Canada. It's going to start in your family files, where you find as much information as you can about your immigrant ancestors.
Okay. And what are the three main ways, if you will, of doing that initial research?
A lot of people interview their relatives. And it can be as simple as going to see, Uncle Joe and say, what do you remember about your grandpa? And, some people will just take a small tape recorder or they'll take notes. I recommend a tape recorder because once an Italian gets started talking about family, then it's on. So you're not going to be able to keep up with notes. But yeah, so you start with your family, you ask them what they know, you ask them, what do you have, do you have anything, from your grandparents? Do you have pictures? Do you have any documents that they brought with them? Anything like that. So that's what they call oral history.
Okay.
And secondarily, I kind of just moved right into documents, document search. So you find out, what you have, what your mom has, if there's anything that other family members have. You would be surprised where pictures show up, third cousin that's, not really very related, but they inherited this box of pictures and, they're like a step cousin or something like that. And so these pictures come from the strangest ways.
Okay. You also include in the book some interview tips, which I'll be sure to include a link to that resource in the show notes. It's from Family Tree magazine. What are the top level things to do research on?
So you're going to want to really determine what their original names were. So say your immigrant, you knew him as Joseph Russo. Well, Joseph is an Americanization of Giuseppe. So most likely Giuseppe is going to be his name or in some portion of his original Italian name.
Okay.
Some aren't obvious, like Stellario. They were often called Tom.
Oh.
One would not think Stellario would be Americanized to Tom, but that happened. So determining the name, determining where they first came in, that can really help find the actual immigration record. So if you knew they settled in Montana and they came in through New Orleans, then you're not going to be looking in the records of New York.
Right.
The immigration records there.
Yeah.
And the key thing to be looking for on these immigration records is place of origin. Where did they reside before they came? Where were they born? depending on the time period, it might actually tell you the town they were born in.
Which would be a great find.
It would be a great find because that's extremely helpful when it comes to Italian genealogy.
So you mentioned in the book a variety of examples of documents and records that might be of use. Can you just give us a short overview of what those documents are that could be helpful?
Sure. What a lot of people find in their family files are passports. They find things that were somewhat like a passport, but they were more like regional passes to move between areas, especially up in the Northeast where, you had areas that were Slovenia and Croatia and Italy and at different points in time. So sometimes there's regional passes. If an immigrant came over prior to the requiring a passport to enter the U.S., sometimes when they went back to Italy, it was required for them to get a pass to move between towns. And I have one of those in my family files, and took me a while to determine exactly what it was, as it was issued by the town of birth for this ancestor. So it wasn't issued by the normal authority that would issue a passport, and it wasn't quite in the same format. And you may also find in your family files the military discharge papers. That's something really common to find because they did not want to get called back for military service. So they brought the proof with them that they had already served.
All right. Is there any other data that might be of use when you're doing this?
Anything about the immigration, where they settled, where they initially settled could be really important. What job they did they move around? I followed one ancestor who came into Philadelphia, and he ended up living in 5 different places following mining jobs, basically. But he was hard to trace and hard to find his town of origin because where he ended up, that wasn't the port you thought he would come into. At that time, I didn't know that he'd moved 5 times. So Philadelphia, in the end, was an obvious choice for his first place of residence.
Okay. Now, you may have already answered this, but I want to make sure. How important are naming conventions? Is that what you were referring to, Joe, Giuseppe? Is that what you're referring to?
No, that's what I was saying. That was Americanizations.
Okay.
So naming conventions can be very helpful in determining what is the name of the parents of this ancestor. So it was common for the first son and the first daughter to be named for the paternal grandparents. So if you know the first son was Cesare and the first daughter was Maria, then the father's parents were likely named Cesare and Maria.
Oh, wow. Okay.
The second daughter and second son were named for the mother's parents. So this can often help you determine between same name records from the same town, the same year, and when you're trying to look for the correct birth record in determining, which one is likely correct.
When did that end? Did that stop happening at some point?
No, it's still going on.
They still do
even
it.
in many Italian descendants, 5 generations down, they're still doing that. Not everybody, but some.
I'm having an aha moment. 20,000 years ago, when I worked at a little pizza shop in Pennsylvania, got close to the Italian family. And I was curious as to why the children had these names, and then their cousins had like almost identical names. And that's probably why.
Right. And let me tell you the problem that causes. So then a couple has 7 children. They all name their first son Domenico. and they're all, say within 10 years, born 10 years of each other. So we probably have 5 Domenicos in that family born within a 2 or 3 year time period in that same town.
Oh my God.
So sometimes it makes it more difficult to differentiate between which one.
Yeah, I bet.
And you would be surprised at how many same name couples marry and give their children the same names. I followed this one family. There were 3 same name couples in this town, and they were named all their children the same. So you have to look at other things in the records to determine, which couple might be correct.
Wow. Almost like a needle in the haystack. That's wild. That's a challenge. What kind of some of the challenges does one face when determining the town of origin? You mentioned that in your book.
Yes. Sometimes they are old names. Sometimes they are abbreviated names. Say you would find on a passenger manifest, an immigration manifest. I was researching this one ancestor one time, and they came from the town of Santa Maria. And do you know how many towns in Italy start with Santa Maria? It was quite a few. So then you have to look at other evidence. It's okay, well, they left out of the port of Napoli, which means they're likely Southern Italian or Sicilian. So then that took like 6 Santa Maria towns off that list of consideration.
Okay.
And it lessened the amount of towns we had to look at records for in order to find it.
Wow. It sounds like a very daunting process. And I'm guessing you must feel very passionate about the discovery and trying to solve the mystery and build the story out based on the evidence and accuracy. Must feel very satisfying to be able to finish a project and hand it to your client. And
it really is.
I bet they love it.
I'm getting ready to hand one to an Argentinian client today or tomorrow, and they could not find where their ancestor came from. Most records just said Italy.
Yeah.
Some records said Genoa. One record said Tuscany. So in the end, we did a lot of research, but in the end, the ancestor's brother's marriage record told us the town in Tuscany that they came from.
Wow.
And sometimes you have to not just research the records of the exact ancestor that you're trying to find information for, but maybe their siblings in order to find that town of origin or where the records are. People followed work, so they could have children born in 3 different towns in a 10-year time period, depending on what type of work they did.
Now, how long does a project like that take? I know it's not the only project you're managing, but in estimation.
It depends on the complexity. On average, though, if there are civil records available for research online, we can get 3 or 4 generations, maybe in 8-10 hours of research.
Okay.
And that includes a lot of information, names and ages and occupations and the street they lived on when their children were born and things like that. And it's amazing what can be found in Italian records. And that's another thing I really like about them, as opposed to some other nationalities' records. They give a lot more information.
Okay.
And learning what should be in a record is important too. And then when that's not there, you have to wonder why. And then you have to think about why is that not there. For example, a really good example of that is an abandoned child. It's like he was born to a mother who does not want to be recognized.
Oh, right.
And this man. So basically, you can kind of infer that this woman, he was unmarried to this woman,
Mhm.
And she was either single or already married to somebody else when this child was born, most likely single.
Yeah.
Because if she was married to someone else when the child was born and she didn't abandon it, then her husband would have been forced to raise it. But if she did abandon it or she gave it to the father to raise, then her name would never be listed anywhere.
So can you
Normally.
find out about that when there's situations with abandoned children? Can you find their parents and their lineage or?
Not usually, but we have on occasion. I had a case a few months back where this child was given to a foundling home in Pisa. And because of the situation, they had information on the mother, and we were able to find that in the hospital's records.
Wow.
But we ended up having to dig really deep because there were 3 years missing from the foster care records. And this child was, put out into foster care. And of course, the year that we needed for his birth was missing.
Right.
So we dug, and we ended up finding this in the hospital, which is still operating in the basement. Wow. And then we had to spend several weeks trying to convince them that it was not under privacy restrictions, this birth from 1851, and then they would allow us to have it.
Oh, wow.
But in the end, we were able to find out information about her, who the father likely is, what town she came from, and who her parents were.
Wow. That's incredible. That's totally incredible. What I like about your book is that at the end of every chapter, you summarize what you call keys to success, right? So sort of taking everything that you dug deep in the chapter, and then just putting sort of bullet points so folks have a sort of a guide and an outline.
Right,
so,
exactly.
What I'll do is I will put that information in the show notes. So folks can see a summary of that as well. And like I said, I will put a link to the book as well. And we hope you found this session informative. And Melanie, until next time.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Ciao.